Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video, we're going to help you improve your own DPS by looking at your Warcraft logs and comparing them to the top players that are playing your spec. So I'll be focusing on Enhancement Shaman in this video. I'll be doing another one for Elemental Shaman, but it's looking at what they're doing and then pulling that in and using that as part of your rotation. So my friend Starcar here has sent me his logs. He said, Tiqqle, I need your help. I need to increase my DPS. I'm not satisfied with where I'm parsing, etc. And honestly, I went to his page here, his logs. Frankly, this is not bad, right? Obviously, always room for improvement unless you got that 95 or higher pretty much. But let's go ahead and dive into it. This is one of the good tools that I think anybody can use, whether you're a healer or a DPS. This is something where we are going to be able to look at all the abilities that are being pressed by Starcar, and we're going to compare them against whoever the top Enhancement Shaman is for a certain boss fight. So let's go ahead and pick on him a little bit. Let's take that Sludge Fist. Sludge Fist is a pretty much 100% uptime fight, except for some knockbacks, staying chained, some mechanics, and there's certain periods of time that you can increase your DPS significantly as he's running into the pillars. Now, the reason I'm picking this fight compared to other ones is, number one, it's his lowest, so let's see where we can improve. But let's also consider the fact that this is not a fight like Sun King, where it's mostly about adds, or there's other fights that might have significant mechanics that will avoid you from maximizing your DPS. In this one, it's really like almost like a DPS check, or at least was. And so I think this is a good one to take and kind of pick on. So let's go ahead and say, okay, that 7% parse, he did 3.1k DPS. His average, his item level for the kill, because I already know, is 205. So we'll be able to look at this. So if we look into here, let's go ahead. I already have another log up, but let's go ahead and look at the summary for the kill. We can see that for damage done, he's going to be on pretty much at the bottom. He does die towards the end, but even then, he is way down here at the bottom, 3.1k DPS. Let's go ahead and go into him. Let's press it. And this is how you can compare your DPS to someone else's as well. You can see all the abilities that he presses, which is fine. But what's the order of the abilities? How does he do his burst, etc.? And so if we go into casts, what this does allow me to do after I select him, it says, okay, here's all the abilities he pressed. And then I can go to timeline, which is on the top right. When I press this, it now shows me exactly what ability is pressed for the entire fight, which is awesome because now I can see how he utilizes his cooldowns as well as the order of buttons that he presses. A lot of things, especially in Shadowlands, are very short windowed. Like, for example, your legendary effect for Doom Winds, if you're running that legendary, which he is, and the other log is as well, that is something that you have 12 seconds of uptime. That's not a lot. That is not a lot of abilities that can fit in there. That's about 4 button presses. 1, 2, yeah, actually 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 button presses, sorry, that you can fit in that window. So what I would suggest you do is take this log and go to the casts, go to the timeline. Now we're able to see, okay, exactly what he's doing. And as you can see, you can already jump ahead, right? If I go to the top DPS for Heroic Sludge Fist, if I go to item level within his range, 205. Now again, item level doesn't mean everything. This person probably has a ton more agility because we can see about 6k DPS, which is pretty high. Trinkets also are a huge factor when you look at someone's DPS. Specifically here, you'll see how he uses it, but this is the individual we're going to be using to compare how he does his burst, how he does all of his rotation. So let's go ahead and go back to the logs. We went to his timeline as well, his or her. And now what you can do is you can literally put them side by side and look and say, okay, well, number one, Tiqqle, let's make sure we're at the start, right? Okay, this is the beginning. And what we can immediately already see is that the openers are different. Number one, let's look at our buddy at the top, Starcar, right? If you look at the opener, there's some improvements that can be made that are pretty significant. And now, and again, you guys can look at this for any class, but we're going to be diving from this point on pretty much headlong into Enhanced Shaman. And I can admit, I did this. I did exactly this when I was comparing my DPS rotation to the top parsers. So just to make sure you're not missing out on something, maybe someone knows something you don't, right? So what we can see is Starcar did a few interesting things in his opener. He started with Wind Fury Totem. Well, when he pressed that, it procs Doom Winds for 12 seconds. Unfortunately, that means these are the only abilities that are going to benefit from it. And we can see he unfortunately then uses some cooldowns, some GCDs that aren't going to benefit from Doom Winds. Unfortunately, that's kind of a thing you definitely don't want to do. And we can see that, you know, Wind Fury, which procs Doom Winds, he presses his Wolves, then he presses Ascendance, he presses his Trinket, and then he uses a global on Earth Ally, which is interesting because Earth Ally doesn't do any damage. It's not worth pressing ever unless you need him to tank the boss or something like that. And we can see that he Flame Shocks later. So this is immediately some tips for him and maybe tips for you. Look at how you do your opener. It's one of the most significant ways that you can impact your DPS. This Sludge Fist isn't a boss where you're going to lust on the opener or heroism on the opener. But if you are, it's even more important because as you get those buffs stacking, it's all multiplicative, right? Like as you get more haste, you can get more globals, you can get more Maelstrom weapon stacks. It all snowballs. So you want to be clean, especially when we have 12 globals as part of your Ascendance or your Doom Winds. I think for Enhancement Shaman, it's extremely important to get your Ascendances right, your Doom Winds right. That will make such a difference in your DPS. I cannot stress it enough. So that's definitely things that I recommend you get clean on what you need to do. And we'll look down below at our boy Azir here and what he does. But we can see for the first 15 seconds, and we'll analyze this in a few chunks, and I'll give some general tips. But we can see he uses, you know, Doom Winds unfortunately early, Feral Wolves early, which is good, Ascendance, Trinket, Racial, okay, setting up. Earth Ally is a weird play, and then he starts doing his Wind Strikes, Crash Lightning, which is good. That'll still proc your Doom Winds. Flame Shock, probably not the play. Probably would better to use Sunder in this case. Or if you're going to use Chain Harvest, okay. But Sunder would have also proc Doom Winds during this period of time. Then another Wind Strike. He uses Lava Lash. Frankly, I don't know if Crash was up by then. But again, you want to get Sunder, Wind Strike or Storm Strike, and Crash. You want to use all three of those during Doom Winds because those all proc those Wind Furies, right? So then he uses, okay, another Wind Strike, Frost Shock, okay, as a filler, Wind Strike, Lightning Bolt. Okay, that's the first 15 seconds, like, okay. And now, and you can, if we actually look, we could look at the damage, like, kind of chart, but it's okay. You can also see, I don't think he used a potion, which is okay, but I recommend, like, you know, on pull, if you're going to be, if the boss fight's going to be more than 5 minutes, you might as well pre-pot, depending on the duration. Now let's look at the other log. The other log is from Missouri, who's the one who is the top DPS. And you should look at these guys, see what their builds are, see what their stat distributions are, see what everything is all about. So let's go ahead and look at how he approached this. And I think my head is in the way, so I'll pull it over a little bit. So how he does the opener is, we'll go over here. His first global, which you can do is at range, is a Trinket macroed with Feral Spirits. Okay, off GCD win that. You pop it, he does immediate damage. He gets the Wolves going. Wolves are going to give you those Maelstrom weapon stacks, also do some damage. He puts his Flame Shock up. He then pops Wind Fury, Ascendance, Wind Strike, Storm Strike, Sunder, Storm Strike. So he's all these buttons right here, all procced Wind Fury, which we're very happy about. It looks like he didn't get a proc of Wind Strike refreshing here. Unfortunate, but okay, he gets those procs. Lava Lash, Wind Strike. He gets the Chain Harvest on cooldown, another Crash, another Storm, Wind Strike. These all are proccing Wind Fury, so it makes sense, right? Now, the other thing that I'm just looking here to see if there's anything else that he used. Nope, that's fine. So that's good. The other thing, like, that's fight specific here is that with Sludge Fist, when he runs into the pillar, which is 1 minute into the fight, he will take 100% increased damage. So you want to make sure you do use Doom Winds early to make sure that it's coming back. Unfortunately, Ascendance won't be up for that one, but it will be up, I think, for the second pillar. So that's just kind of knowledge of as you do the fight, you know, how are you going to line up your cooldowns with maybe this increased damage window. So we can see here, truthfully, I mean, it was very similar, the number of Wind Strikes, but Doom Winds using that later, getting your setup stuff first, your Flame Shock, your Feral Spirits, more important than using the Wind Fury first. Now let's go ahead, I'm going to scroll once to the right, which, what did that do? That went from 15 seconds to 32 seconds, so another 15-second window. And what you can see in the next window, which is still going to be just DPSing, right? I think we're going to see very similar abilities, but as you can see, this is kind of like just using your eye a little bit, you're able to see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 globals used, and he used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So about the same. So what were you using? What was used here? Okay, Crash Lightning into another Wind Strike. Okay, similar here. He dumped some Maelstrom using Lava Lash before this before Frost Shock. Okay, Storm Strike, Crash. This is probably when they're running out and then back in. Storm Strike, Crash. Okay, so very similar here, right? So nothing like that different. We see a refresh of Wind Fury, which makes me think that maybe you didn't have a global to use. So that's possible. Let's go ahead and scroll over here. Scroll over here. Now again, similar situation. I just feel like the bottom portion, it's pretty much the same time. Okay, so top section, Sunder is being used, I think, for the first time. Probably could have used that earlier. And you can see, you know, it's not that much different, but in the bottom, there's more abilities, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I think it's pretty clear. I don't know if there's that significant of a haste difference, but I think bottom is a little bit more comfortable in the rotation, while top maybe not so much. You see Storm Strikes are being prioritized, kind of. Flame Strikes being refreshed. So like nothing too wow here, right? So let's go ahead and move it back, move down. Again, the Doom Winds, the second Doom Winds is being pressed at exactly the same time frame. So that's good. That's during the pillar phase. And we can see during that phase, we're using Storm Strikes, Crashes as priority, and then dumping some Maelstrom as necessary. So like here, so now you can see just basic rotation things about priority of what's being used. But really, I think this is what you can use to look at the openers, as they're pretty much the most important thing that you can do. The other thing you can do is focus on just, like for example, if I look at the bottom, if I just look at Wind Strikes, for example, will tell me when he used Ascendance again, which should be right around 3 minutes. So let's go ahead and go to 3 minutes, because that's how, okay, there's another Wind Strike. So you can see he lined up his Doom Winds, which is being used here, and then he procs a ton of Wind, making sure my head's not in the way, a ton of Wind Strikes, right? So if we do this, if we go to the same period of time on the top log, what's going on there? Well, number one, we can see, in this case, casting a lightning bolt, you pretty much never want to do that. That is another tip for anyone out there. You never want to hard cast lightning bolts ever. I mean, there's nothing else you can do, but there usually is something you can do. So let's go ahead and keep going to 205. Okay. So again, this is where they're bloodlusting, but you can see he doesn't have Doom Winds up, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it was used here, but right here is where you want to couple your cooldowns together to get that multiplicative effect, the benefits out of them. So for example, in this case, we can see Doom Winds being popped, and then Wind Strike, Storm Strike, Wind Strike, Wind Strike, Wind Strike, Wind Strike, Wind Strike. Like so many Wind Strikes. And then in this situation, with even Bloodlust and your ratio, you're able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like that's it. But he had got 6, 7, 8, 9. So and really getting the benefit out of all these abilities in this entire window over here, popped Doom Winds. So prioritizing and understanding how do you pop and benefit those key damage windows is huge. So that's about it. We can see maybe there was some not really knowing what buttons to be pressing, because like filling with Wind Fury, and then this I think where he died. But that's where I think that a lot of people need to focus on is lining up your cooldowns. You know, we have Ascendance is 3 minutes. You have Doom Winds 1 minute. You have Lust, you know. So you want to make sure you're lining these up together and bundling them up tight. You want to do them, use a lot, pretty much all of them early on the opener, get that opener confident, and that will really make the difference. These people are at the same exact item level. We'll go to their stats. Their stats will be different. So again, I'll go to tables. You'll see here that actually their stats are not that different. I thought the stats were going to be much different. Okay, so Starcar agility was 1, 3, 2, 0. His is exactly the same. You can see Starcar's crit is a bunch higher, while Azuri's haste is a lot higher. Mastery is very low on Azuri with some verse. So you can see the stat balances, and you can mirror stat balance, but at the end of the day, what it's about is making sure you're using your cooldowns right. So they effectively have the same gear. right? So it's about using your abilities, making sure you're lining them up correctly, making sure you're understanding what to use when. And in this case, like during some of the general rotation under the casts, it isn't that beneficial to look at the timeline. I think what is more beneficial is to look at the action priority list on the simulations. What do I mean by that? Well, I've talked about it in other videos, but there is the code that is used for Shaman is used for every class has their own code, but this is the code that is basically saying these are the buttons that you should press in what order you should press them in. So it's called the action priority list. It's for Ellie, it's for Enhance, and you're able to see like, okay, for single target, Wind Strike is top priority, you know, yada, yada, yada. Like this is important. I'll put this down in the description, but this is what I would use for general rotation, refreshing your mind on what you should be using. Okay, I should be using, you know, a Flame Shock #1 priority. That's over using a Frost Shock, even if it's Hailstorm buffed. So stuff like that. So this is definitely a useful resource. I recommend to just look at this. You know, you can look at people's guides on websites and stuff. Even I have guides and stuff. I think it's better to look at this. This is just so clean cut, simple. So that's just something else for you. But again, this is how I recommend that you use the logs. I think that you should put them side by side and say, okay, during the first 15 seconds, how do I maximize that damage? Like, let's go ahead and, like I said, let's go to damage done. We'll go timetable. You know, what I'm able to see, if I should be able to get this. Yep. What we're able to see is the spikes of damage and where they're happening, right? So you can see here in the bottom section, wow, that was a huge damage spike that he got right there with Bloodlust. This must have been during one of the periods of time where the boss hit the pillar, which is probably a different one. This peak, this peak, this peak, this peak, perhaps. But you can see, like, his damage in the bottom section is peaking higher, right? It's peaking at 10k DPS. This is peaking at almost 20. This is peaking above 30k DPS. That's lining your cooldowns up. And while the top individual Starcar here is proccing like 7.5. While in reality, a lot of their stats are almost the same. So it's about lining it up, making sure you're utilizing the benefits of those cooldowns. Now, I would recommend do this yourself. Look at your own logs. Do your own things. If you guys think that I should do a different video on a different class or a different spec, or if you think that I should do maybe my own logs and see where I could improve a little bit more, like kind of like rougher video, happy to do that. But I wanted to just show you how I analyzed my own DPS to say, how can I improve? What did I do better? This is what I was doing, especially at the beginning of the X-Pack, when the logs were just happening, as things are just coming out new. You know, whether it's trinket use, legendary use, big cooldowns use, like 3-minute cooldowns on Ascendance. And there is one more tool I forgot to mention, which is WoW Analyzer. If you take your log, you paste it in here, it'll load up that encounter. It will tell you certain things, like, for example, always be casting. You should try to avoid doing nothing during the fights. And it shows that there was certain downtime for this log example. Now, frankly, these are things that, you know, you want to consider. Some things you can't avoid, so win for your uptime. If it's not at 100%, maybe there's a reason for that. But in general, these are all things you want to be focusing on, as well as they'll give you suggestions for consumables, for food buffs. These are all things you want to be doing, and they actually rank them based on major, and then you can actually scale it for minor importance as well. So that's WoW Analyzer. I'll put the link down below as well. So that's it, guys. Just want to give you that overview. I want to thank you guys so much for the support on Patreon and on Twitch. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. We'll keep the streams coming every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Keep putting down in the comments what other videos you want to see. I'll be doing something similar like this for Elemental coming up next. So thanks so much. We'll see you on stream. Take care, everybody.